The rain battered the roof of the old Virginia house. Each drop a hammer against Sarah's heart as she stood frozen in the doorway. Her mother's voice, sharp as broken glass, still echoed, "You're not my daughter anymore." At 14, Sarah had been cast out into the storm for loving a girl. Now, 11 years later, she stood on the same cracked porch, her boots heavy with the weight of 1,000 miles walked. The small town of Willow Creek hadn't changed much. Same picket fences, same church steeple piercing the sky, same whispers behind closed curtains. But Sarah had changed. She wasn't the trembling girl who'd left with nothing but a backpack and a broken heart. She was stronger, forged in the fires of survival, and she'd come back to face the woman who'd turned her away. The door creaked open, and there stood Ellen, her mother, older now, lines etched deep into her face like a map of regret. Her eyes widened, a flicker of recognition, then fear. "Sarah," she whispered, voice cracking like the wood beneath their feet. Sarah's chest tightened, but she held her ground. This wasn't just a homecoming, it was a reckoning. 11 years ago, Sarah's world had shattered in this very house. She'd been a shy, bookish girl, always sketching in her notebook, dreaming of a life beyond Willow Creek's suffocating piety. Her first love, Mia, was a firecracker of a girl, all wild curls and fearless laughter, who'd moved to town in 8th grade. They'd met in art class, bonding over charcoal sketches and stolen glances. By 14, Sarah knew she loved Mia in a way that felt like breathing for the first time. But Willow Creek wasn't kind to girls like them. When Ellen caught them kissing in the backyard, her rage was biblical. "This is a sin," she'd screamed, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and disgust. Sarah begged, tears streaming. But Ellen's verdict was final: leave or be fixed. Sarah chose to leave. She packed a bag, her sketchbook clutched like a lifeline, and stepped into the rain. Mia's family, just as devout, sent her away to a conversion camp the next day. Sarah never saw her again. The memory of that night off, the cold seeping into her bones, of the ache in her chest still woke her in the dark. She'd survived on the streets of Richmond, scraping by with odd jobs, finding solace in queer shelters where she learned she wasn't broken. She'd built a life, piece by piece, becoming an artist whose work spoke of pain and resilience. Her paintings, raw and vivid, had started to gain attention in galleries, but the scars of Willow Creek never faded. Now, standing before her mother, Sarah felt the past and present collide. Ellen's hand shook as she stepped aside, gesturing for Sarah to come in. The house smelled the same lavender and old wood, but the air was heavy with unspoken words. "Why are you here?" Ellen asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah didn't answer right away. She walked to the living room, her eyes catching on the old family photos still hung on the wall. There she was, a gap-toothed kid, smiling before the world told her she wasn't enough. "I'm here because I need to understand," Sarah said finally, turning to face her mother. "Why you chose your beliefs over me?" Ellen flinched, her lips parting, but no words came. Sarah's voice grew steadier. "I was your daughter. I was 14. And you let me go." Ellen sank into a chair, her hands covering her face. "I thought I was saving you," she whispered. "The church, the town, they said it was wrong. I was scared for your soul." Sarah's jaw tightened. She wanted to scream, to shake her mother until the years of pain spilled out. But something in Ellen's voice, raw, broken, stopped her. For the first time, Sarah saw her mother not as a tyrant, but as a woman trapped by her own fears. The silence stretched, heavy as the rain outside. Sarah's heart pounded, torn between anger and a flicker of hope. She hadn't come back to forgive, not yet, but to find answers. Could her mother change? Could they rebuild what was lost? She didn't know. But as she sat across from Ellen, the first crack in their broken bond appeared. Sarah spent that night in her old room, unchanged since she'd left. The same floral wallpaper, the same creaky bed. Her sketchbook, miraculously, still sat on the desk, its pages yellowed but intact. She opened it, tracing the drawing she'd made of Mia, the curve of her smile, the spark in her eyes. The ache was still there, but so was the strength she'd gained. Tomorrow, she'd face her mother again. Tomorrow, she'd start unraveling the past. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting soft light on Sarah's face as she sat at the kitchen table. The smell of coffee filled the air, but the tension between her and Ellen was thicker than the steam rising from their mugs. Sarah's hands gripped her cup, her knuckles white, as she waited for her mother to speak. Ellen looked smaller in the daylight, her shoulders hunched as if carrying the weight of a decade's guilt. "I didn't sleep last night," she admitted, her voice low. "Seeing you, it brought it all back." Sarah's eyes narrowed, but she stayed silent, letting her mother struggle through the words. "I was wrong," Ellen said, her voice breaking. "I thought I was doing what God wanted. I didn't know how to love you the way you needed." Sarah's chest tightened. Part of her wanted to believe her mother, to see the regret as genuine, but the hurt ran too deep. "You didn't just fail to love me," she said, her voice steady but sharp. "You threw me out. I was a kid, Mom. I had nowhere to go." Ellen's eyes filled with tears, but Sarah pressed on. "Do you know what it's like to sleep on a park bench? To beg for food? To wonder if you're worth anything at all?" Ellen's sob broke the silence, raw and jagged. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I thought you'd come back. That you'd change." Sarah's laugh was bitter. "Change? You mean stop being who I am?" She stood, pacing the small kitchen, her boots loud against the linoleum. "I loved Mia. I still love her, even if I don't know where she is. That's not something you fix." The name Mia hung in the air, a ghost neither could ignore. Ellen's face crumpled further, and Sarah realized her mother hadn't known the depth of her daughter's love or its cost. "What happened to her?" Sarah asked, her voice softening despite herself. Ellen hesitated, then spoke. "Her family sent her to a camp. I heard it was bad. She ran away after a year. No one's seen her since." Sarah's heart sank. She'd always hoped Mia had found a better life, but the truth was a cold weight in her chest. She turned away, staring out the window at the quiet street. Willow Creek looked peaceful, but it was a lie. This town had chewed them both up and spat them out. Yet here she was, back in the place that broke her, searching for something closure, maybe, or a reason to keep going. Ellen stood, tentative, and reached for Sarah's hand. Sarah flinched but didn't pull away. "I go to a different church now," Ellen said softly. "One that tries to understand. I've been learning, Sarah. I've been trying to make it right." Sarah's eyes met her mother's, searching for truth. She saw pain, yes, but also a flicker of hope, a hope that mirrored her own. That afternoon, Sarah walked through Willow Creek, retracing the paths of her childhood. The park where she and Mia had kissed, the library where they'd hidden from judging eyes. Memories flooded back, sharp and sweet, but they didn't cut as deeply as they once had. She was stronger now, an artist whose work told stories of survival. Her latest piece, a painting of two girls holding hands under a storm, had been accepted into a Richmond gallery. It was why she'd come back to invite Ellen to the show, to see if her mother could accept her as she was. Back at the house, Sarah found Ellen in the backyard, tending to a small garden. The sight was jarring her mother, once so rigid, now kneeling in the dirt, nurturing something alive. "I want you to come to my art show," Sarah said, her voice firm but not unkind. "It's in Richmond next week. It's about me. About us." Ellen looked up, dirt smudged on her cheek, and nodded slowly. "I'll be there," she said, her voice trembling with something like resolve. As night fell, Sarah lay in her old bed, her mind racing. She didn't trust Ellen fully, not yet, but the promise of the art show felt like a bridge, fragile but real. She closed her eyes, picturing Mia's face, and whispered a silent vow she'd keep searching for her, no matter how long it took. The drive to Richmond was quiet, the hum of the car engine filling the space where words failed. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, her mother beside her, staring out the window at the rolling Virginia hills. Ellen's presence felt like a test. Could she handle seeing Sarah's truth laid bare in her art? The gallery was a small, industrial space in Richmond's Arts District, its brick walls lined with Sarah's paintings. Each piece told a story: a girl alone in the rain, a pair of hands reaching through darkness, a storm breaking into light. The centerpiece was stormbound, the painting of two girls, Sarah and Mia, holding hands under a turbulent sky. Sarah watched Ellen's face as she approached it, her breath catching. "That's you," Ellen whispered, her voice thick. "And her." Sarah nodded, her throat tight. "I painted it to remember her. To remember who I was before I had to fight to survive." The gallery buzzed with people. But for Sarah, it was just her and her mother in that moment. Ellen's eyes lingered on the painting, tears spilling over. "I didn't know," she said again, the words a refrain of regret. "I didn't know how much you loved her." The show was a success, with critics praising Sarah's raw emotion and bold strokes. Strangers approached her, sharing how her work moved them. But Sarah's focus stayed on Ellen. After the crowd thinned, they sat on a bench outside the gallery, the city lights flickering around them. "I'm proud of you," Ellen said, her voice barely audible. "I don't deserve to say it, but I am." Sarah's chest ached, torn between gratitude and the weight of years lost. "I needed to hear that," she admitted. "But it doesn't erase what happened." Ellen nodded, her hands twisting in her lap. "I know. I want to make it right, Sarah. I don't know how, but I want to try." For the first time, Sarah felt a shift, not forgiveness. Not yet, but a possibility. They drove back to Willow Creek in silence, but it was a softer silence, one that held the promise of something new. Back in town, Sarah began to notice changes in Ellen. She joined a progressive church that welcomed queer people, a stark contrast to the fire and brimstone congregation of Sarah's childhood. Ellen invited Sarah to a service, and though she hesitated, Sarah went. The pastor spoke of love and acceptance, words that felt foreign in the context of Willow Creek. Sarah watched her mother sing, her face alight with something like peace, and felt a flicker of hope. But the past wasn't so easily buried. One evening, Sarah overheard a conversation at the local diner, whispers about her return, about her lifestyle. The words stung, but they also reminded her why she'd come back, to reclaim her place, to show she wasn't broken. She started sketching again, filling her old notebook with new drawings, portraits of strength, of love unbroken by hate. One night, Ellen found her sketching and sat beside her. "Tell me about Mia," she said softly, Sarah hesitated, then spoke, her voice steady as she described Mia's laugh, her courage, the way she'd made Sarah feel alive. Ellen listened, tears in her eyes, and when Sarah finished, she said, "I wish I'd known her." It was a small offering, but it felt like a step toward healing. As the days passed, Sarah felt the town's judgment less keenly. She was no longer the scared girl who'd left. She was a woman who'd built a life on her own terms. But the question of Mia lingered. Sarah began searching online, reaching out to old contacts, hoping to find a trace of her first love. Each dead end hurt, but she refused to give up. She owed it to Mia and to herself to try. Sarah's search for Mia became an obsession, a thread she couldn't let go of. Late nights were spent scouring social media, old letters, anything that might lead to her. The pain of not knowing where Mia was or if she was okay not at her. A wound that never fully healed. She confided in Ellen one evening, her voice raw. "I need to find her. Mom. I need to know she's okay." Ellen listened, her face a mix of guilt and determination. "I'll help you," she said, surprising Sarah. "Whatever I can do." It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. They began contacting old classmates, churches, even the conversion camp Mia had been sent to, though its records were sealed. Each dead end felt like a fresh cut, but Ellen's support kept Sarah grounded. For the first time, they were working together, a fragile team bound by a shared goal. Meanwhile, Sarah's art continued to gain attention. A gallery in New York reached out, inviting her to a group show. It was a chance to step into a bigger world, but it also meant leaving Willow Creek again. She wasn't sure she was ready, not when she was just starting to rebuild with Ellen, not when Mia was still a ghost in her heart. She told Ellen about the offer over dinner, expecting resistance. Instead, Ellen smiled, her eyes bright. "You should go," she said. "You've earned this." The words caught Sarah off guard. She'd spent so long fighting for acceptance that hearing it from her mother felt surreal. "What about us?" Sarah asked, her voice soft. Ellen reached across the table, her hand warm on Sarah's. "We'll figure it out. I'm not losing you again." It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a promise to keep trying. Sarah decided to take the New York offer. But first, she needed to close the chapter on Mia. She posted a message on a queer community forum. A long shot. "Looking for Mia Carter. Last seen in Virginia. 2014. She was my first love." Days passed with no response, and Sarah's hope began to fade. Then, one morning, an email arrived from an unfamiliar address. Her heart raced as she opened it. "Sarah. It's Mia. I saw your post." The words blurred through her tears. Mia was alive, living in Chicago, working as a social worker. She'd escaped the conversion camp, rebuilt her life, but carried the same scars Sarah did. They arranged to meet in Richmond, neutral ground, in 2 weeks. Sarah could barely breathe, the anticipation and fear twisting inside her. What would it be like to see Mia again? Would they still fit? After all these years. The day of the meeting, Sarah stood in a Richmond coffee shop, her hands trembling. Ellen had insisted on coming, waiting outside in the car, a quiet show of support. When Mia walked in, Sarah's breath caught. She was older, her curls tamed into a neat braid, but her eyes still held that fearless spark. They stared at each other, time collapsing, and then Mia smiled, and Sarah was 14 again, falling in love. They talked for hours, piecing together the years they'd lost. Mia spoke of the camp, the cruelty she'd endured, and the strength it took to run. Sarah shared her own story, her art, her survival, her return to Willow Creek. When Mia reached for her hand, Sarah felt whole in a way she hadn't in years. "I never stopped thinking about you," Mia said, her voice thick with emotion. Sarah nodded, unable to speak, her heart too full. As they parted, promising to stay in touch, Sarah felt a weight lift. She didn't know what the future held for them, but finding Mia was enough for now. She stepped outside, where Ellen waited, and for the first time, Sarah hugged her mother without hesitation. "Thank you," she whispered. Ellen's arms tightened around her, a silent vow to keep building their bridge. New York was a whirlwind, a city that pulsed with possibility. Sarah's paintings hung in a sleek Manhattan gallery, their raw beauty drawing crowds. She moved through the opening night in a daze, shaking hands, accepting praise. But her mind kept drifting to Mia and Ellen. The reconnection with Mia had rekindled something in her, a spark she thought she'd lost, while Ellen's tentative steps toward acceptance gave her hope for a future she'd never dared imagine. Back in Willow Creek, Ellen was changing too. She'd started volunteering at a local queer youth center, a place Sarah wished had existed when she was young. Ellen called her one evening, her voice bright with purpose. "I met a girl today," she said. 15. Kicked out like you were. I told her about you, how strong you are." Sarah's throat tightened. Her mother was trying, not just for her, but for others. It wasn't redemption, not fully, but it was a start. Sarah and Mia kept in touch, their calls and texts a lifeline across the miles. Mia visited New York a month later, and they spent a weekend wandering the city, rediscovering each other. In Central Park, under a canopy of autumn leaves, Mia kissed her, and Sarah felt the world right itself. "I want to try again," Mia said, her voice steady. "Us?" Sarah nodded, her heart racing. It wouldn't be easy. Years apart had left their mark, but they were both fighters. Back in Virginia, Sarah returned for Thanksgiving, her first holiday with Ellen in over a decade. The house felt different now, warmer, as if the ghosts of the past were finally resting. They cooked together, Ellen teaching Sarah her grandmother's cornbread recipe, their laughter tentative but real. After dinner, they sat by the fire, and Ellen handed Sarah a letter. "I wrote this for you," she said, her hands trembling. "For when I couldn't say it." The letter was an apology, raw and unpolished, detailing Ellen's regrets, her fears, and her journey to understanding. "I failed you," it read, "but I'm learning to love you as you are." Sarah's eyes blurred with tears as she read, and when she looked up, Ellen was crying too. They didn't hug, they weren't there yet, but Sarah felt the distance between them shrink. Mia joined them for Christmas, a bold step into the heart of Willow Creek. The town still whispered, but Sarah walked with her head high, Mia's hand in hers. Ellen welcomed Mia with a nervous smile, offering her a seat at the table. It was awkward, imperfect, but it was family messy, real, and growing. Mia's presence brought light to the house, her laughter filling the spaces where silence once reigned. Sarah's art continued to flourish, her work now featured in galleries across the country. She painted Mia often, capturing her strength, her joy, her scars. Each piece was a love letter, not just to Mia, but to the girl Sarah had been, the one who'd survived. She sent one painting to Ellen, a quiet scene of a mother and daughter under a clear sky. Ellen hung it in the living room, a silent promise to keep trying. As winter settled over Willow Creek, Sarah felt a shift within herself. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. She had Mia, her art, and a mother who was learning to love her. The past would always be there, a scar on her heart. But it no longer defined her. She was stronger. Not despite her pain, but because of it. Spring brought new beginnings. Sarah and Mia moved in together in Chicago, a city that felt like a fresh start. Their apartment was small, cluttered with Sarah's canvases and Mia's books, but it was theirs. They built a life together, piece by piece, learning each other's rhythms. Mia's work as a social worker inspired Sarah, who began volunteering at a youth art program, teaching kids like the one she'd been to find their voice through paint. Ellen visited often, her trips to Chicago a testament to her commitment. She'd bring homemade jam or old photos, small offerings to bridge the gap. One evening, as they sat on the balcony overlooking the city, Ellen spoke of her own childhood, raised in a strict household where love was conditional. "I didn't know how to be different," she admitted. "But you taught me." Sarah listened, her heart softening. Her mother wasn't perfect, but she was trying, and that was enough for now. Sarah's art took on new depth, her paintings now exploring themes of forgiveness and renewal. A solo show in Chicago drew a crowd, including Ellen, who stood proudly by her side. One piece, Reclamation, showed a girl stepping out of a storm into light, her silhouette strong against the chaos. Critics called it her best work yet. But for Sarah, it was personal, a testament to her journey. Mia and Sarah grew closer, their love a quiet strength. They talked about the future marriage, maybe, or a home with a garden. But they were in no rush. They'd learned to savor the present. One night, Mia pulled out an old photo of them at 14, laughing in the Willow Creek park. "We made it," she said, her voice thick. Sarah nodded, her fingers tracing Mia's face in the photo. "We did." Back in Willow Creek, Ellen became an advocate, speaking at her church about acceptance, sharing Sarah's story with her permission. The town was slow to change, but Ellen's voice carried weight, and a few families began to listen. Sarah visited less often, but each trip felt less like a battle. She and Ellen were building something new, not the family they'd lost, but one forged in honesty and effort. One day, Sarah received a call from the youth center where Ellen volunteered. A girl there, 16 and struggling, had seen Sarah's art online and wanted to meet her. Sarah flew to Virginia, nervous but determined. The girl, Lily, was shy, her eyes shadowed with doubt. Sarah shared her story, not sugarcoating the pain but emphasizing the strength that came after. "You're enough," she told Lily, handing her a sketchbook. "Draw your truth." Lily's small smile was a victory, a reminder of why Sarah kept going. As summer approached, Sarah and Mia planned a trip to Willow Creek together, a chance to show Ellen their life. They arrived hand in hand, greeted by Ellen's warm, still hesitant, embrace. The town still stared, but Sarah no longer cared. She was home not in Willow Creek, but in the life she'd built, with Mia by her side and a mother learning to love her. The summer sun bathed Willow Creek in gold, softening the edges of a town once sharp with judgment. Sarah, Mia, and Ellen sat in the backyard, a picnic spread before them, laughter mingling with the hum of cicadas. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever was, but it was real. A moment Sarah had never thought possible. Sarah's art career soared, her work now in demand across the country. She and Mia were planning a joint project, a series of paintings and stories about queer youth, a way to give voice to those still fighting. Ellen contributed, sharing her perspective as a mother who'd learned too late but was making amends. The project became a beacon, drawing attention from advocacy groups and galleries alike. One evening, Sarah and Mia walked to the park where they'd first kissed. The old oak tree still stood, its branches heavy with memory. They sat beneath it, hands entwined, and Sarah felt a peace she'd never known. "We're stronger than they thought," Mia said, her voice steady. Sarah smiled, leaning into her. "We always were." Ellen's transformation continued. She spoke at a regional conference on queer acceptance, her voice shaking but clear as she told Sarah's story. The audience listened, some with tears, others with nods of understanding. Sarah watched from the back, pride swelling in her chest. Her mother wasn't erasing the past, but she was building a future where others might not suffer as Sarah had. Lily, the girl from the youth center, became a regular in Sarah's life. She sent sketches, each one bolder, and Sarah mentored her from afar. One day, Lily called, her voice bright. "I got into art school," she said. "Because of you." Sarah cried, not from pain, but from the joy of seeing someone else rise. As the years passed, Sarah and Mia built a life rooted in love and purpose. They married in a small ceremony in Chicago, Ellen there with tears of joy. Willow Creek was no longer home, but it was a place they could visit without fear. Ellen's house became a haven for queer youth, a place where they could find acceptance and a warm meal. Sarah painted a mural on its walls, a vibrant scene of hope, with two girls at its heart, holding hands under a clear sky. The night before Sarah and Mia left for a new exhibition, Ellen pulled Sarah aside. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice steady now. "But I'm so grateful you came back." Sarah hugged her, long and tight, the weight of years falling away. "I'm glad I did too," she whispered. Sarah's story wasn't just hers, Anna Marie, it was a light for others, a testament to resilience. She'd been kicked out at 14, told she was wrong, but she'd returned stronger, not just for herself, but for Mia, for Ellen, for Lily, for every kid who needed to know they were enough. As she stood with Mia under the stars, Sarah knew the truth: love, in all its forms, was the strongest force of all.